G'day YouTube, Quaker John here. Today I have Alan with me to discuss the 650cc engine of your Vulcan S. G'day Alan.
G'day, John.
Alan is a regular contributor to my channel and he lives in Michigan, USA, and I live in Brisbane, Australia. Okay Alan, let's get started. What kind of engine does the Vulcan S have?
It's funny that you ask that question because we've talked about this multiple times, and if you would indulge me just for a couple of minutes here, and the viewers, we talked a few months back about the Vulcan S and why you and I bought the Vulcan S and all of the good things about it. And one of the things that was the most concerning to me was that 650 engine. And when I was looking, I decided about a year ago that I was going to get back into motorcycling. And when I was looking for a motorcycle, I went down to our local dealer. They had the Honda Rebel, they had the Yamaha Bolt, I think it's called, the Suzuki M50 Boulevard, and they had the Kawasaki Vulcan S. A couple of those have pretty big engines in them. The Vulcan S was the one that attracted me the most, but where I was concerned was that 650 engine. So I did a lot of, if you will, research on the Vulcan S Kawasaki, how they came about, that motor and the rest of it, because you got to understand that my history with the 650 engine goes way back to like 72, 71, 72, and 73. I actually, in 63, in 73, purchased a 1960 BSA Gold Star, which was a 650 engine, British made, obviously, and owned that for about 6, 7, 8 months, which got me started into motorcycling. The bike was very good handling, but it had no power. And obviously with British bikes back in those days, you shifted on the right side and your brake pedal was on the left. So it was instead of the Japanese. So that took some getting used to. But so my point to the whole 650 engine was my experience with that British bike and any of the other bikes at the time, the Triumphs and Nortons and whatnot. Some of them were a little underpowered, and so I was concerned about that. And then in the early 80s, I had a friend buy a Yamaha, I think it was called an XS650, and it was kind of a takeoff of the British bike. And again, it was just it had like 40 horsepower. It just didn't have a lot of horsepower to it. And I don't know. So when we got to the 650 Vulcan S, I started doing a little bit of research with the engine and how that the inline twin is what it's called, or parallel twin, depending on the configuration, how that got going. And what I learned was this. And obviously, the twin engine first was evolved back in 1870 something, and then in the early 1900s. But the real first production engine configuration of a parallel twin was by the British in 1938, and their particular motorcycle was called the Triumph. I got my notes here. Was the Triumph Speed Twin. It was a successful straight twin motorcycle, and led to straight twin engines becoming more widely used. Now, obviously, that was 1938. The war started in 39, so that killed all of any of that stuff. But after the war, through the late 40s, things were beginning to pick up again. And by the 50s, the British were actually putting parallel twins on the market. BSA, Triumph, Norton, who's some Ariel, Matchless, and then another company called AJS. And the British basically, with the 650 engine, basically based off of that 1938 design, came up with what they called a parallel twin. And what a parallel twin is obviously two cylinders, and what's happening, and you'll see my hand go this way, but they're going up and down in sequence like this. That's your parallel twin. Now, the advantage to that is that you fire one cylinder here, then it goes down, it comes back around, and you fire this cylinder, then it goes down and around and fires this cylinder. So that's how the parallel twin design was. And the advantage to that, that's what they call a 360 parallel twin, was that you only needed one coil to fire the two piston spark plugs, and one carburetor could feed both cylinders. Now, to get a little more horsepower, later on they put two carbs on it, so to get a little more air fuel in there. And they still didn't develop a lot of power, but they were compact, they were reasonably reliable, and so that was that. Now, the Japanese decided that when they got into the market, they were going to do the parallel twins, but they went with what they called a 180-degree sequencing of the engine. And what 180 degrees is cylinders doing this, okay? Now, the reason they did that is because it tends, obviously, if you got a parallel and they're going around like this, there's a lot of mass going around on that crankshaft. When you've got them firing at intervals of 180 degrees, it kind of smooths them out a little bit. You're still got some counterweights in there. And I think it was Honda was one of they tended to be the most innovative, but they came out with their 450cc inline twin. That's when they're doing this, the 180 inline twin, and it actually had more horsepower than the old British twins. So, but you need two coils, you need two carburetors, different things. So that is how it kind of got going. But now, if you do a little more historical stuff, you'll see what happened. And two strokes were still the big deal. Kawasaki basically built their first motorcycle. I think it was what the heck was it? Their first real motorcycle, Kawasaki's, was back in 1961, I think it was. Yeah, it was a 125cc two-stroke. So Kawasaki started building motorcycles in the early 60s. And by the end of the 60s, 69, they had the Mach 3 500cc. And a year later, they came out with the 750cc. Then, obviously, Honda came out with the 750cc inline 4, which really put the kibitz on some of these parallels. Now, in this whole period of time, Harley's still building their V-twin, but a whole different configuration. So the inline 4s through the 70s and into the 80s pretty much took over the market. There were still some twins being built, inline twins. Kawasaki came out with a 750cc inline twin. I think it was 74, but they discontinued it in 83. It just wasn't a favored engine. What people wanted was inline 4, a lot more horsepower, smoother, that type of stuff. So that is how those two configurations are. With a parallel twin, you have three different ways of firing it. Like I said, the 360 design, the 180 design, and then there's what they call a 270 design, where it fires once, and then at about 540, it fires again. And that is the same timing sequence as the V-twins. So the only manufacturer that I know of right now that's building at a 270 is Yamaha. They're currently making a 270, and I think, as I read my notes, I think the Yamaha is the TRX 850 and the Yamaha TDM. So those are the current variants of twin, the 270 firing order. The Kawasaki 650 is a 180, what would be called an inline twin. So there's that.
Okay, well, you've covered a bit of this question. How was the 650cc engine developed to this point?
Yeah, and so part of all of that was obviously through the 80s and 90s, the twin kind of lost favor. But from Kawasaki's perspective, I don't know if people realize this or not, but the 650 engine that's in the Kawasaki Vulcan S. That engine was first put in to production and in a motorcycle back in 2006, and that was their Ninja 650. And it had like 70 horsepower. It was a very nimble little. If you didn't want to go with a full liter bike, whatever, that was quote unquote kind of the break-in bike, a newbie bike or whatever. But it was their 650 Ninja that really brought that engine into the fold. And then in 2008, Kawasaki came out with the Versys, which is kind of an adventure bike. It's got a lot more ground clearance. It's got some different fairings and whatnot. So the Versys came out, and Kawasaki then took basically the same engine and put it in 2015. They put that 650 engine in the Vulcan S and made a cruiser. They lowered the seat. They gave you forward controls and did those type of things with it. They've played around a little bit with the cam profiles and the actual ignition timing, but the basic engine, as far as its compression ratio, the transmission gearing, all of the different gearing in that, all of that is exactly the same. The clutch packages, everything. That's why initially people thought that the Kawasaki Vulcan S had a slipper clutch. That's a whole nother discussion, but it had a slipper clutch in the transmission because the old 650 Ninja did. But because of the way Kawasaki designed the Vulcan S, they didn't think it was going to be as a cruiser. It wasn't going to be a canyon racer. So the slipper clutch wasn't installed. It's about a $400 piece if you want to. You could buy slipper clutches for the Vulcan S and put those in, but it's about a $300 to $400 piece to do. And there are advantages to that, and we can talk about that at some other point down the road. But it's very interesting to me that the 650 engine from Kawasaki has been around since 2006, and the 650 engine in total has been around since the 50s. So you're talking 7 decades of that engine. They're easily manufactured. Well, I'm not going to say easily, but they're relatively easy to manufacture. They're reliable. They give good horsepower. As we've talked about before, several of the things, the Kawasaki 650 inline twin puts out about 60 horsepower advertised from their websites, 46 foot-pounds of torque. I've seen dyno reads of 54, 55 horsepower, so it's within the whatever you want to say, the 10% range. So anyway, that's the history of the Kawasaki 650. And that was, like I said, that was one of the biggest concerns I had initially with the Vulcan S's. Was that 650 going to be strong enough to haul my fat butt around on the motorcycle? And one of the nice parts about the 650 is it's narrow, it's lightweight. With today's manufacturing, they can make it very lightweight with the aluminums and whatnot. It puts out a lot of horsepower for the bike, and the Vulcan S only is 500 pounds. So those are all good things. And then the Vulcan S obviously has the ergo fit. So if you're a shorter rider, you move the seat forward, you pull back the handlebars, you put you can configure the bike in any form in order to fit the rider. So that's another good part about the Vulcan S.
Okay, so what are some of the benefits and also drawbacks of the 650cc engine?
The benefits, basically, it's been around for a long, long, long time. Obviously, with the Kawasaki 650, it's been around since 2006, probably earlier than that in testing. So it's been around 15 plus years. It's very reliable. Very little vibration. They've worked through that. You can extract a decent amount of horsepower out of it. And from a manufacturing standpoint, because they've made so many, the costs are down, and it's easy on gas. And so for the most part, the parallel twins or the inline twins have proven to be very reliable. I don't know if there's any real negative other than obviously they may be limited with size, although there are some twins that are upwards of 1,000 cc's. You just got a lot of mass moving around, and that just equates. And when you start getting to that kind of stuff, now there's a lot of other things engineering wise you got to deal with. But the little twin motors have been around for a long, long, long time, and they're pretty reliable. If you're looking to buy a Vulcan S, a 650 Kawasaki, there's bikes out there with 10, 15, 20,000 miles on them, and they're still running just great. So that's probably, I don't know if there's any real disadvantage other than, if you want something that's going to run 150 to 100, 200 miles an hour, you're not going to get that. You're just not. It's going to be horsepower limited with the twin.
I'm glad you answered that, because I was wondering what the drawbacks would be. Well,
go ahead.
No.
Well, that would be the only drawback would be, like I said, I think there are some engines, parallel twins, that are pretty good size. The last one that Kawasaki made that was a major size was 750. I think that was the biggest they ever made. But you're dealing with a lot of reciprocating mass, pistons, connecting rods, all that kind of stuff, and you're gonna reach a point where it's just not comfortable. As everybody knows, a big V twin, 1600 cc's, it produces a lot of torque, but it also has a lot of mass going back and forth, and it's limited with the RPMs, and weight is a big thing. So if you're going to build a light bike that's narrow, the 650 inline or parallel twin is the way to go.
Well, thanks very much, Alan, for your comments and research, because I know you put a lot of work into these chats.
Yeah, and I will tell anybody, if you like these chats, go ahead and subscribe. Put your comments below. We'll try and answer those. We will be doing some stuff specific to the Vulcan S down the road here. We'll talk about the fuel system, the oiling system, the cooling system, and whatever else. But that will be coming pretty soon. I personally really like my Vulcan S, and I think most people do. They may graduate from the Vulcan S to a larger motorcycle, but for just scooting around town and going back and forth to work, that kind of stuff, just cruising, the Vulcan S is an excellent motorcycle.
Yeah, I love my Vulcan S too.
Yeah, I heard a YouTuber use his definition of his leisure time was on his motorcycle. It was just him, the motorcycle, and Mother Earth, and I would agree with all of that. It's the leisure time, and that's why one of the things with the Vulcan S, there's so many accessories you can put on it that you can make it anything you want. So there you go.
Okay, Alan. Well, thanks very much, and see you later.
See you guys. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoy these videos, subscribe to the channel. The Quacker John Vulcan S show is on every Friday night at 10 PM Brisbane, Australia time. You are most welcome to join in. You are most welcome to join the Quacker John chat room, and the link for your invitation to join the chat room is in the comments under the video. I published a book called My Kawasaki Vulcan SE Adventures, and it is available on the Amazon website. See ya!